Now, welcome everybody. So, Portrush is fast approaching, and I guess as a kind of precursor to all the build-up and all the talk, it's interesting to look at a new documentary which is out. It's called "This Is Open Country," and it's going to premiere on Sky Sports Golf and on Now as well on July the 10th. And I guess in some respects, it's a story we're very familiar with, but it's quite enjoyable to look back at it nonetheless. It really centres on Irish achievement at the Open in recent years. And it is just extraordinary. You know, we have lived through a remarkable decade, 13 years. If you go from Harrington's win in '07 through to Lowry's win in 19, 5 Claret Jugs in 13 years. You know, it's USA numbers and then some. And that is not to mention Rory's other 3 majors, McDowell at Pebble Beach, Harrington at the USPGA. So, 10 in 13 years? Absolutely frightening. So there are contributions in the documentary from Harrington, from McIlroy, from Lowry, from Darren Clarke, and also from Paul McGinley, who I'm happy to say joins us now. Paul, really nice to have you back in the show. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
We will not live through, I mean, maybe we will, and I look forward to it. We will not live through an era like that again anytime soon in Irish golf. That was just so bonkers.
Yeah, I'd like to think maybe we will. But yeah, I mean, it's been a phenomenal run, that's for sure. And, you know, a lot of reasons collided for that to happen. And, you know, a lot of guys took advantage.
Yeah. It was funny at a point in the documentary, the ripple effect has been much talked about, you know, Harrington and the belief and not the envy, but like you made the point, well, Darren believed in his soul, I'm a better player than Padraig. And hence, you know, that feeds in maybe to 11. But you make the point that the reputation Clarke has as just gifted does him a bit of a disservice, that he's a seriously hard worker as well. Because I would always associate Clarke with just gifted.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest jokes in golf is the way that Darren is positioned as this happy-go-lucky Irishman, always in good form, drinking his head off, partying his head off, incredibly gifted, and that's the success that he had. We all know and talk about and revel in how hard Padraig worked. I can promise you that golf meant as much, if not more, to Darren, and he worked equally as hard. You know, having lived with him for 20 years next door in England, having seen him practice, seen the effort he put in, on top of the God-given talent that he had, and there's no doubt he was up there right behind Rory in terms of God-given talent, and that's a high bar, as we know. But he also worked at it, and probably worked at it in some ways. It hurt him more than helped him, because he was so obsessed about the game and he worked so hard about the game that he went up blind alleys too regularly. I think he admit that himself. But he worked very hard and he had incredible ambition. I'm full of admiration for what he's done in his career. And this idea that he was a happy-go-lucky, easygoing Irishman is a joke, particularly in America. All Americans believe that.
Yeah. It's probably a difficult thing to articulate. Can you give us a sense of the talent he had at the same time?
Well, I remember coming on when I was playing the boys under 18. I mean, I was 5 or 6 handicap at the time and barely getting into these events. You know, with great junior programs in Ireland, north, south, east, and west, as well as some of the boys' championships. And I remember coming on the scene. I was barely getting into these events, but there was one guy who stood out from everybody else. He had bleached blonde hair. He came with an arrogance. He had this Northern Ireland look about him of confidence. He had a big Titleist pro bag. He used Balada balls. None of us could afford a Balada ball that were given to him by Titleist. He had, you know, irons that the players were using on tour. He had woods. He had all the latest gear. And he hit the ball just phenomenal. He was a different league than everybody else. So from the age of 16 years of age, Darren was a step ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. I always found watching him, like, the club looked so small in his frame and in his body. It was just like, you know, every club was like a little pitching wedge to him. Just looked so easy in that way.
I think Scotty Scheffler's a bit like that, Joe. I think certainly it used to be a hindrance in golf, and they used to position that, oh, the ideal height is Tom Watson or Ben Hogan, 5'9", 5'10", and you swing around yourself and you know, use your body. And I think what we've seen, the evolution of the game and the swing, is, you know, guys of 6'3", 6'4", like Darren is, like like Scotty Scheffler is. And I think there's a big advantage to that now. Their arc is bigger. Their game has got a lot more longevity in it in terms of distance. They hit the ball further because they've got a much bigger arc. And as they get older, that should stay with them. So certainly when I look at Scotty Scheffler, I get the same view. I mean, a 5-iron looks like a pitching wedge in his hand. And there's got to be a little bit of a benefit to that in this modern game where power is so important.
One of the other things in the documentary, and to be fair, I think an Irish audience know most of this stuff already. I think the international audience will be really fascinated to watch it. But they all make a point that they come from humble backgrounds. The Rory, Lowry, Harrington, Clarke quartet who won all these majors. You know, Clarke talks about the first time he played Portrush being brought up there by his father before they lived there, and it was a Friday and it was a fiver. And that was golf in that era. It was very accessible.
Absolutely. And that was one of the big reasons I said at the start there's a lot of reasons that collided for that to happen. And I think, looking back at where we all came from, the 80s and 90s, Ireland, it was a very different place than it is now. Money was tight. Money was very tight. But golf was cheap. And you could play Portrush, you could play Portmarnock, you could play Lahinch, for not a whole lot of money. And there was no private gates or, restricted access. And the other thing that we had that was very fortunate, all of us, we two things that really kind of propelled more than anything. One of them was the accessibility to all these amazing golf courses, north, south, east and west of Ireland, as well as all the scratch cups. So we were on a bit of a tour, all of us were, at different stages, where you play the west in Ross's Point, you play the east in Baltray, you play the north in Portrush, and then you'd also play the south down in Lahinch. And then the Irish Close would rove around. One year it would be Royal County Down, then it would be Ballybunion. We had all of these top classes, maybe even Portmarnock that had access, Royal Dublin, that had access to the Irish Championship. And so we played unbelievable golf courses. Then you throw in the scratch cups of Mullingar and Carlow that were 72 holes. And then if you elevated onto the Irish team, you went on the road and you went to play all of these great Open Championship courses over in the UK, which was a big deal at the time. So that was one thing. The second thing was the Golfing Union of Ireland, and back then it was the Golfing Union of Ireland, now it's Golf Ireland. They were phenomenal in terms of organising these events. That we had a great schedule. It was a really good competitive schedule, more than anything competitive. Yes, we had training sessions and all of that, but it was more so the competitiveness. So we competed against each other from an early age. And then the third one is the point that you just made. And that's probably more important than anything else. And if you look at all the soccer players, the Wayne Rooneys and the great players that have come from the last 2 or 3 decades, they all come from humble backgrounds, and we all did too. None of us came from privileged background, none of us at all. There was no money in Ireland. And what the common denominator Blanky put through all of us, and particularly the guys that have won the majors, is and won the Open, is the fact that they were hugely, hugely ambitious. And then you combine that ambition with the competitiveness that elevated when we got on tour. As much as we were friends, we also competed against each other and always looked out for each other's score. So a combination of those two things fueled. And then when your friend, as much as he's your friend, had big success, you were envious. Deep down, you were envious. Yes, you were congratulating him. In a lot of ways, you were happy for him, but you were also fueled even more so to say, well, he's doing it. I can do it. And I play practice rounds with him, and I know him really well. And I know this guy's got weaknesses, and yet there he is after going and winning a major championship. So it was a combination of all of those things. And certainly Padraig was the pioneer in terms of winning a major, not just in an Irish sense, but in a European sense. And a flurry came after that because Padraig was not regarded as naturally gifted and separated from everybody else. And that made winning major championships real. They knew that Padraig had won because of hard work and strong mental strength more than anything else. And they said, well, they're two things that I can match.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Well, that old Gore Vidal line, every time a friend of mine succeeds, part of me dies, there's a grain of truth in that. I wonder, so you take those backgrounds today, yourself and the 4 boys, it's hard to imagine they're playing the same caliber of golf course these days, or the accessibility is there. Are we good in the country if we identify a bit of talent that we're kind of getting a talented youngster now to play in those golf courses, or is it less accessible?
No, it's not. It's more expensive. That's for sure. If you wanted to just go and pay a green fee somewhere else. It's more expensive, and it's difficult to get onto these courses because they're sold out. You try to get on the Hinch this time of year, it's absolutely jammed. Every single day is jammed. Ross's Point the same, Portrush obviously the same with the Open going on there now. So there's a little bit less access because they're so busy, and of course if they're getting 400-500 euros a green fee from the Americans, of course they're going to get priority. Having said that, those first championships and the venues that I talked about earlier are still in place. You also have an Irish close that roams around the country as well, and you still have your scratch cups going. So there's no excuses. In some ways we're a victim of our own success. I think as more money has come into the country and more money has become accessible to leading amateurs and guys who just turned pro, is that blunting a little bit of their ambition? It's not kind of eating what you kill anymore in terms of money. You went out and you knew if you didn't make a cut, you were going to battle to pay the expenses for the following week. And that's what it was like when you started on tour. We had we'd minimum amount of sponsorship, and you had to go and win, and every pound was a prisoner. Yeah. So it's important that ambition is not blunted in any way. I know the guys need help and the girls need help when they come on tour. But fueling that ambition through your own success is really important. Really important that we don't go too far with it.
It's I guess it's something you may have thought about before. I don't really see a great commonality in the games of Rory, Lowry, Harrington, Clarke. The competitiveness for sure, but like there are competitive people all over the world. That's in people's DNA. But you wouldn't look at those four on the range or follow them around the golf and go, Irish games. Whereas, it's South African, certain tendencies you see, American less so because it's such a vast country. Do you see a through line in the games of those four and you, some kind of commonality or no?
Yeah, I think we're pretty good at working the ball. When you're playing the heavy winds that we did growing up on the links golf courses and playing that amateur scene, and we all played those amateur scene, Rory included, the west of Ireland, east, the north, he played all of those events. So when you're playing in heavy winds, you need to be able to control the ball and work it both ways to hold it in those heavy crosswinds that you get on the links courses. So I think we all have that. Certainly Shane would be one who would come to mind more than any. His short game, is brilliant. You go up to Baltray and you throw those runoffs around Baltray and trying to get it up and down off some of those. Certainly his skills have been harnessed around there. But also, you got to remember, Rory and Shane, went to America relatively early in their careers compared to us. So they became a bit Americanized in how they played the game. They had to adjust to the American style of game. And particularly Rory. Rory was, when he went to America with all this power that he had such an advantage over everybody else, and he used it as much as he could. And at that stage, then technology had moved. So it was about high launch, low spin. And high launch, low spin is great when you're in America with very benign weather conditions, but high launch, low spin doesn't necessarily work on a links golf course. So it's something that he's added to his game over the last few years. He's realized he's had to do that. Is when he hits that, I love to see him hit that little kind of low, kind of 40-foot high rather than 120-foot high driven drive, a fairway finder, a stinger, as Tiger used to call it. That's something he's added to his armory. Only in the last few years, Joe, he didn't have it when he went over to America first.
Yeah.
Or didn't need it. Need it more so.
Well, by his own admission last year at Augusta and at Troon, the wind got him. It's kind of stark when you think where he came from, but Americanized, as you say.
Yeah, but if you look at him now, there's certainly in the last 12 months, there's been a big elevation in his skill set has broadened. It's not that he couldn't play the shots, but he's seeing them now, and he's been pushed in that direction to play them, particularly with the wedges. You look at his wedges now, they go in a lot lower than they did even 2 or 3 years ago. He hits these low 3/4 wedges in now and controls them. Like he never performed well in Pebble Beach before, and he won there this year. Pebble Beach have got a lot of greens. Most of the greens slope hard from back to front. They're quick for the AT&T. And if you're not controlling your spin in there, you end up with 30 feet of backspin. So for Rory to win around there, even though you don't really see it on TV, that he had control of his spin going into those very tiny greens with a lot of slope on them. When the ball is not backing up that much, that it wasn't a big, high launched spinny shot. It was a low driven shot with a little bit less spin on it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, July 10th, the documentary's out, Sky Sports Golf and Now, and people can kind of relive those golden years as well with contributions from all the main protagonists. At one point, by the way, in it, Shane Lowry kind of says, we're back at Portrush pretty quickly here. I mean, 6 years, tight turnaround. Why have they gone back so quickly, do you think?
Dare I say it, money?
Yeah.
This is the world of money when it comes to sport. It's not just golf. And when there's a commercial value in going somewhere more so than anywhere else, it's going to get priority. And Portrush was a massive success.
Yeah.
Commercially, aesthetically, it was great on TV. It was a fabulous golf course that the players loved. And I know it was an exciting event from our point of view as Irish, watching Shane go over the line. But if Shane had been South African, we would have said, oh, what a miserable event that was, because he kind of cantered to victory. But still, the fact that it was a home winner and cheered over the line by the Irish crowds made it a great event. So a lot of things, but to commercial reasons more so than any.
Been lucky enough to play it. Fascinating to get your kind of proper insights. For a start, it's a fun golf course to play.
I've always said it's my favourite in Ireland, Joe, and I'm not. My favourite doesn't mean I think it's our best. I think Portmarnock or Waterville would probably be better, stronger courses. But my two favourite courses to play in Ireland are Baltray and County Louth. In County Louth and Royal Portrush, for the reasons that you just said. They are fun to play, and you feel you can get something out of the golf course. It gives you opportunities. And that's what I love about golf, and I try to bring to my golf design business now, is that it's okay to beat the golf course. You don't want to get beaten up every time you play. The weather conditions on the coast of Ireland normally beat you up anyway. But when you get a little bit of an edge against the golf course, it's fun. And no matter what handicap you are, if you're a 10 handicap and you go to Baltray and you shoot 83 or 84, you're coming away thinking, God, I can't wait to play again. I know I can break 80 around there. I know I can do it. When I play there and I shoot, well, nowadays I struggle to break 70. If I shot 72, I'll be going, I wish I could go again tomorrow, because I know I could do it. Whereas you take me on to Waterville or Portmarnock and I shoot 72 and I'm going, it's pretty good. I do well to shoot 72 again tomorrow off the back tees. That's kind of the fun of golf, is that you've got to win sometimes. And I think Portrush gives you an opportunity to win. And all the holes are such different directions. Yeah. You take somewhere like Troon, Royal Troon last year, where we had the Open. It's straight, first 9 straight out, back 9 straight back. So you're either right to left wind, or you're left to right wind, or straight into or straight down. And it's a little bit one-dimensional. Whereas in Portrush, every single hole is in a different direction than the one before. And you're always looking and trying to check the winds. The greens are relatively big, and the par 5s are accessible. So it's fun. I think you've absolutely nailed it there with that word fun. It's a fun course to play, and the pros feel the same way about it.
Yeah, every shot's interesting. It's interesting. And I know, you'll often talk about how a course is framed, and it's got that. And also, well, I guess, if we talk about the Open and open golf, the longer, it's so the opposite to when I first started playing. And I just wanted the ball to go up in the air, and I just, it's fun. The more you're kind of, I'm around the game, the more watching players use the ground, and then the more you play, the longer I play, the more fun it is to use the ground. Like, above all else, working the ball in the wind, I appreciate that, and the shot making ability required to play the Open. But geez, the joy for these 4 days, if you're a golf fan, of watching them use the ground has become my favorite thing about the Open. You just love to see them do it.
Absolutely. You can't do it in America with the ground so soft. And that's why I hate soft conditions and when the rain comes, which you get a lot of this time of year in America. And around the greens as well, Joe. It's not just the second shots in there chasing along the ground, or drivers, hitting these stingers and getting 30, 40 yards a run. It's not just that. It's how to use the ground around the greens and the pitch and runs up these banks and judging that. That's a skill that the players will be practicing a lot at the moment. I see Shane and Padraig out in Portmarnock playing, and they'll be doing a lot of those shots, readjusting back to links again. It's not that they don't have the shots, but it's harnessing that skill. It's a different skill set. And going back to Rory again winning the Grand Slam, that's what's so great about the Grand Slam. It's like sitting 4 different exams. Yeah. It's like history, it's like maths, it's like geography, it's like Irish. It's 4 completely different subjects that you have to sit. And that's why only 6 people have ever set that exam in the history of the game, because it all requires different skill sets to win each of those majors.
Well, even for amateurs, especially when you first start playing links, there's always that moment if you're playing with a more experienced player and they're like, yeah, landed 25 short. You're like, I can't bring myself to do it. And then, of course, it's the right thing to do, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's one thing landing 25 short, but you've also got to have the flight on it. The flight has got to match the roll that you're looking for. And that's what we love about it. It brings a creativeness in. Your mind thinks better. When you're playing in America, it's very one-dimensional. You very rarely have winds more than 10 mile an hour. And it's normally so warm, the wind doesn't affect the ball that much anyway. Yeah. So you're very much playing by computer. What's the yardage? What's the carry in the bunker? How many is the flag on after that? Okay, I can hit a 9-iron 143, so I know I can carry the bunker at 140, and off you go. Whereas over here in the links, it's a lot more creativity. There's a lot more goes into it. There's a lot more conversation with the caddies, and there's lots more optionality as well, Joe. There's not just one size fits all. In America, it's one size fits all in general. You know, that's the yardage. There's virtually no wind, and you just go at it. Whereas over here, well, there's 4 different shots you can hit into the screen. What one are you most comfortable with?
So do you see it as the truest test of a golfer, the Open?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. I grew up on it. I love it. It's in my DNA. You know, our country is synonymous with it. You know, links golf courses are not really anywhere else in the world except Britain and Ireland. You know, we're unique in that sense. And that's why you have so many visitors coming into Ireland. It's not like they can go to somewhere in America and play links courses because they don't have the sand-based turf that we do over here and in the British Isles. So it's something that we grew up with. It's something that we harnessed our skills at a young age. And then we just got to dust them off and get them ready when you're going into playing a links course, which the guys are doing at the moment. And that's why a lot of the guys now choosing to come and play in the Scottish Open, which they didn't do before. And I could never understand that, how everybody didn't prepare. Like, you know, I mean, would Federer in the day or Djokovic now even consider going to play on grass without playing a warm-up tournament somewhere, no matter how small it was, or even going and practicing? So, you know, Jack Nicklaus did that. You know, Tom Watson famously did that. He kind of introduced it more than anything else by coming down to Ballybunion in particular and spending a week there practicing before he went over to win 5 Open Championships.
Yeah. Was Stuart Sink even said the year he beat Watson, he would spend a lot of time at Lahinch. He said the front 9 at Lahinch in the documentary is the best front 9 of any course in the world.
Yeah.
I thought, geez, I need to go back to Lahinch. I think I'm sleeping on that.
Well, everybody's got different views, you know. Lahinch is another one of those fun courses we talked about. I'd have it right up there with Portrush and Baltray as one of my favourites to play for that reason. But everybody's got different views, and that nobody is right and nobody is wrong. Everybody sees it through their eyes. I
always heard that Langer went to Corbelis. Is there truth in that?
I think he might have practiced there a little bit during when the Irish Opens were there down in Portmarnock and Royal Dublin, and he wanted a similar links golf course, and somebody said, well, it's a public course down the road, you'll have easy access on there. And I think that's kind of where that came from. But a lot of it is myth, a bit like, you know, when the famous one about, is it the front of the sprinkler and the back of the sprinkler? I mean, that was complete nonsense.
Yeah, that one never stacked up, I have to say.
No, but I would believe that he would have gone down to Corbelis and either chipped and putted around some of the greens or hit some balls. I can see that.
Yeah.
Seve used to do it too. Seve, when the Open was in Portmarnock, Seve used to go to Royal Dublin and practice there in the wind.
Right. Okay. Your Open experience. So I sort of had a look here. 92 to 99, your first 7. You missed the cut 5 times, including the first 3. What happened to all this DNA talk? It's in my blood.
I think you'll find the answers in my head. You know, raising up a level of playing at elite level. I never was a guy who was really competent at the game. I had to work hard at it. I had to kind of slowly build up my confidence in it. And you know, I was certainly overawed playing in the Open Championships for the first time, having watched them all on TV and finally realising my dreams and playing in these big elite events against the very best of players. So I would say, to be quite honest, I was somewhat overawed going to play in it.
Right.
And also my schedule as well too. I'm playing on a European tour. I'm more concerned with keeping my card and trying to build on that. And that was a priority more so than the reality of you know, could I win a major championship or could I contend in it? Well, I had other priorities, and I was more prioritized with trying to forge a career and cultivate out a career in the European Tour.
Your 2 best finishes in 2000, tied 20th, and in 19th, 07. So people will obviously remember 07 for Harrington and probably forget that you finished 19th. And then 2000 was Wood St Andrews, wasn't it?
Yeah, I played well there. I played also well in Lytham, where I faded on. I think shot 74 on Sunday, went down to that 20th place. I played with Tom Lehman, who went on to win in the 3rd round. I was joint leader after 2 rounds.
Right.
So I had flurries. I had flurries of good golf, but didn't put 4 rounds together. I did play. I think I played in the last group the year Padraig won. No, I was second last group. Sergio was behind me. So I was in contention there. It was a very bunched leaderboard. Torrential rain that morning. The golf course changed significantly, and I didn't play very well on that Sunday. I didn't have it. My energy levels were down. I wasn't on the cutting edge. It's funny how sometimes you wake up and it's just not there. And I knew the minute I woke up there was something in me that was empty. My battery was flat. I don't know what it was, but you'd think that, God, a second last round of the Open or second last group in the Open, I would be chomping at the bit. But I battled all day long. I didn't hit the ball well on the range. I remember going to the first tee and thinking, Jesus, why? You know, I just knew inside me it just wasn't there. And then other days, I remember going out against Stuart Sink in the singles in the Ryder Cup over in Detroit. And I remember looking at Stuart Sink in the first tee and going, there is just no way in the world that you are going to beat me here today. I just had everything inside me that was stoked to win. And I don't care how well you were going to play, I was going to beat you. So it's funny how kind of how the mind can play tricks, or maybe it's the body as well too. A bit of physiology and a bit of the battery running down, or I don't know.
That's interesting about that Sunday of all days. And I'm sure you're like, come on, let's get a sugary drink and let's
absolutely. I mean,
or that adrenaline would kick in or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there was plenty of that. And there was certainly nerves, but it was a nervous energy rather than a positive energy of relishing the battle here. And it's one of my big disappointments. Why was I so flat that morning? It's
just tired because you'd poured so much into the week. Presumably,
maybe it was that. I don't know. I haven't got the answer to it. I mean, there's not a definitive answer to it, but sometimes you start out that way and you find a bit of form and then you move into it and then you gallop on. But I just never got any air into my round early. I didn't make many birdies earlier on, and and then the field were all making birdies because the course was so soft after the torrential rain of the morning, and there was an avalanche of players playing well and getting off to good starts, and I had a slow start, so I kind of took myself out of from there. I'm just battling for position.
Yeah. Which of the courses on the road are the most fun to play?
I think the best course is Turnberry, and I think it's a real shame that we're not playing it. I know people have got a lot of views on Trump, but I'll tell you what, he's made a hell of a job to the work that he's done in Turnberry. The golf course is even better now than it was when, back in the day when we played. The changes that he's made, the new holes out by the lighthouse are fantastic. Tom Watson went back there a couple of years ago and he said, I hated when I heard that he was going to make some changes to Turnberry with all my history there. But I have to admit, when I've seen it, I think it's better than it's ever been. And I'd agree with him. It's a shame that it's not on the road. But St Andrews is special. St Andrews is incredibly special. I've played all the Open venues. St Andrews is special because of what it is. But probably, I'd have Portrush up there and Muirfield as well too.
Yeah,
I had 2 hole-in-ones in the British Open, or in I used to be called then the Open Championship. I had a hole-in-one in Lytham and a hole-in-one in Muirfield.
Yeah, I was in Muirfield once. I was there when it was bleached. The year Mickelson won, it was an amazing week. Because it's funny, when Keir Starmer was at the White House and it was widely leaked, one of the first things Trump said to him is, "Keir, Turnberry Open, come on." And they did go back and they've talked to the RNA about it. So there's the Trump thing, but there's also, is it just hard to get the footfall to Turnberry? It's isolated, isn't it? Is that one of the reasons too?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons too. Like I said at the start there about why go to Portrush. Commercial has a big say on things now. But, it's not that far. It's only 15, 20 minutes away from Troon where they played last year. Okay. So it can't be that massive a deal. But I would agree, though, it isn't the bottom left-hand corner of Scotland. And it's the last golf course down before you hit England. Big golf course, open venue course. So, there would be legitimate commercial concerns.
And how close is St Andrews to being overtaken by technology if it hasn't been already?
It has already.
Yeah.
It has already. I mean, it's a real shame what technology has gone, in my view, where it is. I know the players don't believe this. Of course, our turkeys aren't going to vote for Christmas. Yeah. They don't want any changes. But I think it's a real shame the way that technology has overtaken the professional game, not the amateur game. I think it's great that the amateurs, are finding so much fun in the game. These bigger heads and the drivers, for example, are much easier to hit than the smaller heads that I would have started out with on tour. But it's a real shame that the distance, the power that the players have now. I mean, I played with Rory, quite a bit now in the last year or so. Just I've been around him a lot. I was involved in the TGL. We did clinics, most of the events that he played in, and watching him hit the ball. I played with him last year in Queenwood. We had a pro member over in Queenwood last year, and I played with him. I mean, he's 65 yards outside me, Joe. And I know that because I got the binoculars out when he was standing at his ball. 65 yards. And now I still play pretty decent. But he yeah, okay, that was a big one when he's going across a corner. But in general, he's 40 yards outside me.
Right.
So as I say to, around Queenwood, which is a pretty good golf course, 7,100 yards. If you said to me, right, Paul, I want you tomorrow to go out and play Queenwood, that you know well, and I want you to walk 40 yards off every tee shot. And wherever you get to, you can tee the ball up and drive from there. And I want you to play and see what score you had. I tell you what, I would back myself to shoot 67 or so. The golf course will be so much shorter.
Yeah.
I'd be hitting mid irons into the par fives. I'd be hitting wedge into all the par fours. And the golf course has become very accessible. And that's what you're looking at with these elite players, 72, 7,300 yards. If there's no wind to bash them around or heavy rough like we had in Oakmont, they're so capable and they can overpower the golf course where it looks like they're not putting very well. And yet you add up the score and it's 68 or 67. And if they do put well, it's 64. And that's what you're looking at. And I think it's a shame that they're able to hit the ball well over 300 yards at every single tee shot, and the golf courses then have to put in these new tee boxes. They change the angle of the hole, and everything is being adjusted for the 0.01% of the golfing population because they've outrun technology.
You've just reminded me, I'm going to finish with a stupid question that often gets asked about what would an amateur do in a certain situation. Your 40 yards tee thing reminded me of there, but. Give us a word on Rory and what your gut says about where he is, given everything.
I think there was a reaction. A lot of us thought it was going to be a really positive reaction, and the gates were going to open after his win in Augusta. The opposite has happened. He's talked himself about being somewhat flat and being a somewhat little low energy. I think there's just a period of adjustment, and we saw flashes of him a couple of weeks ago. When he played well over in Connecticut. He had a good, very best round of the day, last round of the US Open. Rory has always been up and down in his career, and people forget that. It hasn't been a straight line, his career. He's had a number of downs, and what he's very good at is bouncing back. So I think there's a period of adjustment going on to the colossal achievement that he had in completing the Grand Slam. And the build-up of 11 years of A, not having won a major, and B, not completing the Grand Slam. So there's a lot of scar tissue there that was put to bed with his win there. And I just think there's a period of adjustment going on. I think he'll be energized this weekend. Just to see how he's going to play in Scotland leading into it. He normally plays well up there.
Yeah.
And I would say that, he'll be ready for Portrush. He's got two massive things between now and the end of the season that mean a lot to him, Joe, that will certainly energise him. And one is the Open Championship at Portrush, where he's got unfinished business after what happened the last time. And the second one is, one of the big achievements he's talked about in the game before he won the Masters was to complete the Grand Slam, win another major, and win an away Ryder Cup. So he's very energised and very communicative with Luke in that regard as too. He's really up for that as well. So there's still a lot of unfinished business there, and he's always at his best when he's out there with something to prove. So some kind of an edge. When he's got an edge and a pointy elbows out, as I call it, that's when he's at his best.
Yeah. Well, I am struggling to think of a first shot of a tournament that the whole golfing world is going to make sure they see as his first at Portrush in 2 weeks. Everyone's going to be, what time's it teeing off? I need to see this. And I'm sure he'll hit it up the middle, no problem. But the memory of that moment is still so shocking, out of bounds. I didn't know there was an out of bounds until he did that.
Well, we talked earlier about him having a better armory of shots than he might have had before. And even when he played in 19 in Portrush there, when he hit it out of bounds, he's got different shots in his armory now that he's cultivated and practiced and works. I'll be very surprised if the tee shot off the first is not a 2-iron, could be a driver, could be a 3-wood. We're not sure depending on where the wind is going to be. But I'd have a good bet that it will be a low-driven 30, 40-foot high shot. It won't be a big flailing hook in the air. And that's Tiger. People forget that about Tiger. They say they sexize up this stinger shot that Tiger had. Oh my God, what a shot that he had! Tiger told me that stinger was made out of fear.
Yeah.
He hits that shot when he's fearful,
right?
When he's afraid of missing a fairway, when he has to hit a fairway, when he's got no confidence in his driver. And he cultivated this shot to put it back in his stance and get on top of it, squeeze it and drive it down the fairway. And as you say, let the ground do the work. And that's where that came from. And a lot of players, well, certainly Rory has added that to his armory now. We saw him, Rory's normal ball height, just to put it in context, the normal ball height for a player on tour with a driver, look, you'll see with the shot tracers we have on TV now, look out for it. The normal is about 100 foot. If you see a player hitting it around between 95 and 100 feet, that'd be tour average. Rory being one of the biggest hitters in the game, he's up around 125, but he can get it up to 140 feet. Right now, that mightn't sound, that's only 30 feet higher. Believe me, that's significantly higher. But what he has now is this ability to take it under 40 feet. So, I mean, he's gone from 125 feet down to 40 feet and lower than 40 feet. We've seen him play that in the past. So it's always a good thing, more so than the speed, because we know how fast they do it. But when you're watching the TV coverage next week, I always look for the height more than anything else, because that tells you the shape of shot that they played. And if you see anything under 100 feet, and certainly if you see it right down under 50 feet, you go, okay, this is shot making. This is shot making at its best.
Okay, interesting. Last one. An email about this comes in from time to time. You just reminded me of it with your, I'm going to walk 40 yards up and drive and see how I do. And I'm not qualified to answer this question. I could have a guess. So, against Scotty Scheffler, a 10 handicap golfer at Augusta starts 15 yards in front of each green, and Scotty's off the back tees. Who wins?
Right.
Who wins?
Oh, I'm back in the 10 handicapper.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it feels wrong to say it, but they should really win, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, he's making 4 at worst, surely.
Well,
he is.
Well, I'm talking around Augusta, the greens as fast as they get kind of thing. Like, the presumption is a 10 handicapper is going to throw in like an 8-putt at some stage, that kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not that quick. To be honest, the greens that I saw in Oakmont, I thought were more complex than Augusta. And a lot of the players said the same thing, Joe. I mean, they had a huge amount of slope, a huge amount of speed, and Augusta. Yes, if you get on the wrong side, if you hit a bad iron shot, that's why iron play is so important there. If you hit a bad iron shot in there and you get on the wrong side of the flag, of course they're treacherous, but the guys are so good now, they're generally putting from a pretty benign place on the greens. They're not as fearsome as they're made out to be, in my opinion. I think the greens in Oakmont were in a lot of ways more fearsome.
Yeah, I'd never seen anything like that. Even the 4-footers, the 5-footers, I'd never seen it before. It's crazy.
Do you ever see so many putters from 6, 7, 8 feet missed?
Never.
It was unbelievable, wasn't it? Yeah. Now those greens were pure. I mean, they were beautiful. They were Poana greens. Everybody talks about how bad Poana greens is. They're not. Poana's great this time of year. A lot of the courses in Ireland have Poana. We call it meadowgrass. It's very similar grasses. But US Opens are generally played on Poana greens, and they were brilliant. Really, really good greens. I hit some putts in a practice round on them, and the ball was rolling beautifully. So, but it was amazing how many guys misread putts or balls found ways of not going in. But I think a lot of that was the old psychological thing of the difference psychologically putting for pars, which they were doing a lot of in Oakmont, whereas putting for birdies. If you give the same guys 8-footers for a birdie as for a par, the guys for birdies will hold a lot more, even in the pro game, because you're at that psychological place of, well, if I don't miss, it's still a par. Yeah. Whereas you're fighting for your life trying to put for par. As Trevino used to say, pros, 2 things don't last in life: dogs who chase cars, parked cars, and pros who are putting for pars.
Yeah. Right. We are pretty much done. Sorry to ask you. That's the kind of questions I'm going to ask you at 3 a.m, by the way.
There's a lot of myths out there about what the game is, and I think that's one of them. Augusta, of course, it's difficult, it's amazing, it's brilliant, but it's not as a 10 handicapper. I'm having a good bet on him against Scotty Scheffler.
Right. Okay. Maybe we might maybe the Golf Channel put something together and we watch that next year. This is Open Country, and Paul's involved in it along with Harrington and McIlroy and Lowry and Darren Clarke and others. Premiers on Sky Sports Golf and on Now on July 10th. And I guess it's all steam ahead, Portrush. Paul, always good. Thanks a mil.
You're welcome, Joe. All the best with everything. See you soon.